Hello everyone, Linker here with the very first AFKArena Round Table. We have lots of advice and game topics to cover, but first, let's meet our honorable guests. Why don't you introduce yourselves?
Howdy, I'm Arty. I'm known mostly for my inconsistent guide making and unbridled passion for the game. I just kind of sit around all day on Discord and help people talk.
Hi, I'm Grub. I'm Cloud Deputy, just sort of all-round sort of Discord nerd and just weird theory crafter.
Hi, I'm Panafonic. I do a bunch of the code leaks for the game.
Hi, Shizzam here. I'm Deputy of Cloud and co-founder of Cloud9. I've won a few Legends Championship tournaments in Region 8, and you may also recognize me from some content I created on Reddit.
Hey guys, I'm Soviet, more casual content creator on YouTube.
And I'm Volkin, just make videos on YouTube.
Hi guys, I'm Zolbar, long-time Region 1 Legends Championship player and GM of WestWorld.
All right, thank you all for coming. I'm so happy to have you. And let's just get on to it. So for the first topic, in terms of hero balance, we see a vast majority of changes, the majority of them being buffs. Shizzam, you're very experienced, and I was wondering, what is some advice you have for players trying to stay on top of the meta, and how is the lack of nerfs going to affect the game on the long term?
Okay, thanks, Linker. With a game like this, you've got to plan quite far ahead. You put a lot of investment into, your choices, and you can get locked into some of the decisions you make early on. And if something comes along, and there is something coming along every month, a new hero every month, new game mechanics, then you're at risk of getting left behind if you make not the best choice at the beginning. I think Lilith have been quite creative in the way they've addressed this. You collect a lot of resources as you go along, which kind of means that you're not too locked. And what I think was really clever of Lilith is having this dimensional link, so that even if you have invested into a hero which wasn't the right choice, it may have been good early game and is bad late game. I'm thinking of Shamira here. You can still link that hero to something that you will need late. So, yeah, you need a plan. You need to make your choices. You need to try and be aware that, although there aren't any nerfs, the heroes you choose may get, as you've said, shadow nerf, because all the other heroes get buffed, whether it's signature items rendering Brutus relatively irrelevant, or whether it's furniture moving the meta towards heroes like Isolde, etc. So although your choices you make may be kind of not efficient later because of changes Lilith introduces, they have given you a few saving graces so you can repurpose some of that investment. Does that kind of cover what you're after?
I think it does. How about you guys? What do you think about how heroes keep getting buffed and that leaves some power creep behind?
I think it's very difficult for Lilith to directly nerf heroes, because if people have invested time and in some instances money into these heroes, that they'll be very disappointed if they directly get weaker. So the buffing as a general sort of strategy is the only real viable one that they have. I think Shizzam covered a lot of the outs to say Shamira and Brutus very well. And I just think generally it's quite exciting because you never really know what's coming around the corner. Like sometimes you'll get a Satrana like rework where a hero goes from completely unusable to having its own niche, certainly in the game. And then you'll get, as Shizzam mentioned, something like Isolde, where furniture, just the addition of a new feature where his is so strong, it just completely revolutionizes how you think about him within the game. Yeah, I generally agree for sure with, I think it's all that they really can do. And I like it as a philosophy in general. I think it keeps things exciting.
And the other thing on top of that I think too, the system of the select summons that came in, and also like the Misty Valley, how you get the select hero choice, especially for regular heroes. Obviously, Celestials and Hypergeans are a bit different. But that select summon, like on like my accounts, which I haven't spent a hell of a lot on, still get 3 summons. I jump on Kiasma's account or something like that, an endgame account. You're getting 9 summons per month. So you can sort of keep up with the heroes. It just becomes an issue of furniture and signature items to balance that out. And I know some people have asked for like to be able to reset some of those, but I'm not sure how I feel about the whole situation on that. But as obtaining the heroes, it's a lot faster than it was in the beginning. And a lot of people, like I just see in comments and stuff, talk about slow down with the heroes being introduced into the game. I can't keep up. But if you pick the ones you really do want, I don't think it's too much of an issue of having too many heroes.
Yeah, I would agree with that because as a free-to-play player, I can feel that. If you make the wrong choice at the very beginning of the game, you can end up with a hero that is not that good at the current meta. And if they will be nerfed more over, it will be even bigger hit for the players who don't really go deep into the theory crafting and picking the right heroes, who just want to play the game and progress. So those guys can go on, move on, and progress by increasing their level and increasing the stars of the heroes and equipment and the furniture, but they can still feel the progression in the game and don't get disappointed by it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that one, actually, especially with the choosing the, I guess, wrong hero at the beginning of the game. I actually have two people that I've gotten into the game that are about chapter 16 right now, that I've kind of, I would say, guided them a little bit. They're not super into theory crafting. They don't visit the Reddit. They don't look at all the other stuff. They just kind of play it by ear about, like stuff that they want, with just a little bit of guiding and stuff, keeping them away from a few of the characters. I know because one of them was very excited to have Rain, and I was like, gotta break something down for you here.
Gotta get Ruby as well.
Yeah, just like little things like that. I know, especially I would like to see a little bit more of the Maulers get buffed. I think they're a very cool faction. But they definitely suffer from the having to kind of go in. That they all want to be on the enemy side, and I don't think that Lilith has either skills or stats for them to kind of survive over there, because they kind of just get blown up the moment that they, I would say, get away from their tanks, get away from people who are kind of directing stuff away from them.
Another part, I think, for a lot of newer players or players trying to stay up with the meta, the best advice I would give personally towards trying to avoid investing into these poor heroes and avoid kind of going off meta a bit would be more so to look at sort of hero cores. These can generally be found through like Legends Championship, throughout later game stages, stuff like Iron Lyca, like Taline Rowan. Just these core synergies that kind of make the game how it is. Oh, and kind of looking towards future ones that are coming out. Some of the newer stuff, sort of like the Scraith +3 furniture with Iron Pole. A lot of these sort of newer synergies that kind of add on to older heroes. And I think the best way to kind of learn it is to ask players who are kind of at these later stages of the game right now, chapter 34, 35. It's people who are pushing past where I'd say the majority of the endgame player base is.
All right, so what would you guys' advice be to someone who's just starting out, trying to figure out their carries, but then they're afraid that tomorrow they'll introduce somebody like Ainz or somebody big like that?
There's one thing, Shizzam here, there's one thing Lilith do well, which is even if you invest in a carry that becomes not the best in a month or two's time, that you get to 31-4 and you have two rounds, you get to later parts of the game, you have up to 5 rounds. So you're going to need 25 heroes. So you're not too penalized for making not the best choice or making a choice that kind of gets a bit dated. And similarly, you need to perform on so many different dimensions of the game, guild hunts with Twisted Realm, Abyssal Expedition, that it's, something that might not be the best choice. There are other ways. Yeah, I mean, you might not make the best hero choice, or try to make the best one, as the others have said, try to do your research, try to choose because you are investing. But if you've made not the best choice, it's because you'll probably need that hero later.
I think one other little thing that I want to mention is also a lot of people do just play to have fun and aren't about full meta as well. And that's completely fine too. I think sometimes we do get trapped into this is meta, do this. You look at accounts and it's like, why aren't you doing this? But like that, for a large portion of players, I feel like that is still very much an option. If you just like something and want to play it, there's nothing wrong with that as well.
Hard agreed.
Yeah, I totally agree with the because you'll always do better with things that you're passionate about. So if you really like these heroes, even if you, so for me personally, I gain a lot of, if I like seeing what the hero can kind of do, it intrigues me a lot. So when I first saw that Aaron, like when he was released back in the day, he could pull in 3 heroes, I thought there's no way that's not going to be broken. Like that's the first time I really actually got some faction scrolls and pulled on Wilder, because I was like, I need this guy. This guy can, you can pull everyone in and smack them down at the same time. Like this guy's got to be broken. It looks so much fun. You can't play in fear that the game is going to change in a month's time. I think it's important to, if you do want to do the research, certainly do the research and ask people what works and what doesn't, and use that to guide your decisions. Say in 6 months' time, nobody knows what this game's going to look like. It could have another feature release, like an elder tree or a furniture, at that kind of big scale, and it could really shake things up. But it's very unlikely that something that you like and is very strong right now is going to be completely useless in the future. So you can't fear these changes. You just got to play along with them and enjoy them when they're released, in my opinion.
And on top of that, I think expanding on what you said about Iran and also what Arty said is unique sort of like abilities that do something that no one else in the game does, not just things based on damage, I feel like are always going to evolve and get better with time, like Iran, because basically every new hero that comes into the game that has, some sort of quick AoE or something, or an AoE stun, is just going to add on to the effectiveness of the options for the Iran and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. You'll get new synergies. You'll get just new ways that these heroes can combine as more released.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I really like how this is starting out. And I want to cover also some other topics. So another topic that's really interesting that I have over here is that with the recent F2P breakthrough to Chapter 34, we see the meta forming. You have Thor and Cheese, you have Gwyneth, you have Daemon, Aaron, and Isolde. These are typically the 5 sets that F2Ps run in very late game campaign. And with this meta, some community members come out and said stargazing in general is a mistake. On the other hand, you see Celestials and Hypogean compositions seem to gain value with time. So you have most KT replays past 500 being one form or another of the God Comp, or the vast majority of them. So Arty, you've made a lot of guides in the past, and I wanted to hear your suggestions. How do you approach helping players decide if and when they should stargaze?
Oof. We'll start off kind of by assessing sort of the main argument between. I'm going to call it 4 faction versus stargazing. That comes from AMB. Big shouts to him. The 4 faction strategy is that until you have basically every faction hero in the game of usefulness maxed out, you should not stargaze with diamonds. Going with cards for twins, Talene, that's always still fine. But the main argument is to not gaze with diamonds. Sort of the pro to this is more so the level cap keeps on rising. You need the more ascended heroes to match it and match the resources required, as well as the steady increase of strong faction heroes. You get Daemon recently, Isolde is sort of risen recently, Pippa still shows a lot of promise. These heroes with quite possible, at least moderate meta implications. Whereas if you're building, let's say you're gazing and you're going into heroes like Mezzoth, Orthros, they're all going to be useful, but you're probably going to get a similar usage compared to investment out of these faction heroes. I think the reason you would go for the 4 faction strategy is to try and optimize the amount of resources you can get early on with Field of Stars and kind of make sure your levels are scaling well. That way, I think as you hit endgame and you can start gazing properly, I would not, I think, consider gazing for a free-to-play until, say, probably at least 25 to 30 ascended heroes at the moment. There's so many strong faction heroes, just effective, at least moderate heroes. I always hear Brutus getting trashed on, but that's one that always shocks me. As you hit endgame, Brutus becomes a very core part of the game. And these other heroes, Inoki, Titus, a lot of maulers tend to spike up. I think there's a lot of pre-existing sort of love for celestial type of GMs. People like their exclusive heroes, the stuff that's hard to get. It's like they sort of sleep on the stuff that's right in front of us, the hidden gems.
I can kind of agree with you on the not stargazing until you have people more up. I think one of the actual first ones that I kind of rushed was our little succubus, Mahira, or however you pronounce it. I pronounce most of these people wrong anyway. But she's almost useless to me. I rushed her to Mythic. I rushed her 30 plus, and I almost don't use her at all.
Really?
When I definitely could have put those diamonds towards something else. I mean, to be fair, I also rushed her because I very much I liked her character design and all the stuff around her. But as new heroes came out, as new heroes became meta, it was less and less of her, pretty much as my team comps changed to be less centered around her. It became a little bit less of a good investment for me when I could have invested into, I guess, more core heroes than anything else.
I'm keen to see how Mahira goes with the new artifact anyway, because I feel like getting that CC off early could be handy. But on the topic, like, I'm not going to speak from a like min-max optimal point of view. I just know with my like current main account, which is the one that I started saving diamonds from chapter 10 and then went all out on Stargaze for Taylene as soon as I could. And on that account, I've spent probably $200 to $300 aside from dimensionals. So not a whale account, at least from my perspective. And the thing about it is, like you guys touched on it, it's fun to have those hard to get heroes. And I did hit a point where I reached my cap on ascended heroes for level cap. But with dimensionals, that sort of got blown out of the water. Like the amount of XP you needed after that, and then getting the dimensionals to link, which increased the cap, sort of saved me from that issue. But just on the topic of enjoyment in the game, like it was really enjoyable to be in like chapter 18 and have an ascended Taylene without spending a heap on the game. Because at that point when I got her ascended, I think I'd bought like the progress packs and a couple monthly packs, and that was about it.
So I think the interesting discussion is who you stargaze, because you do get these cards. You don't get too many from, say, faction towers, but they do add up enough to at least sort of get you in there. Maybe not all the way to ascended without adding in some diamonds, but to sort of get yourself a lot of the way there at least. So Taylene is in my opinion, the strongest, I think in many people's opinions, the strongest hero in the game and the most centralizing. Everything kind of does everything, can be used anywhere, pop it in, good to go. But she also does a lot before you reach the ascended mark. Say, as a lot of free-to-play players have come through, they're all using Taylene as like an elite or legendary version, just as a basically a heal bot, and to sort of attract attention from enemies so your other units can carry. Whilst she is so strong, she can still fill her own niche without actually being ascended. So using those Gazer cards to get Mahira or twins closer to ascended seems to be the way that free-to-play players have gone, and has sort of always been my approach to the way I view how to use these cards that you do get as well.
I want to play devil's advocate here because I actually am not sure I agree 100% on all of that. I think that stargazing, even for free-to-play players, might be worth it. Because if you take into account everything that you actually have, so Rowan, for example, is a hero that's highly accessible. Mahira, some people, like I've heard some FTP, very successful FTP players that just gazed her, but I think you could replace her with Tassie to decent success. Twins, you need a few copies anyways if you want to go for TR. So really, it's about Aziz from the Challenger coins and just gazing Talene. And I feel like with not that much investment, you could get a God comp going, and the advantage of having a God comp going is that it can feel for whatever comp you have that's weak later. So if you go down the way and you have like 3412 or 3356, those stages that people get stuck on in the very late game, having a God comp there, I think, can save you a lot of time and pave you replays at 10, 15 levels less than you would otherwise have to be. What do you guys think?
So I just wanted to say quickly, I would never give an opinion one way or the other whether or not stargazing is worth it for free-to-play players, because I have no experience whatsoever running a free-to-play account. So that would be so my take was just on how to spend the gazer cards that you do get. Whether or not you gaze with diamonds, there's plenty more people more qualified to answer that than I am. But yeah.
Shizzam here. Probably before going into your question, I want to address something which I see a lot of, which I don't think there are circumstances where gazing for stars on a hero is really worthwhile. It's so expensive for stats. It just, I see a lot of people do it, and I know that's not really a free to play thing or a P2P type thing to do. But yeah, I definitely want to get out there. Stars are very cost effective stat one, which I know is not quite on topic. But I think going back to your topic on gazing versus not gazing, I think Arty has a very strong around needing a deep roster. I mean, if you're in the stages you mentioned, 33, 50, etc., you're going to need a lot of heroes that are strong. And I think the way the game gives you resources, a lot of emblems for the purple and gold emblems, it kind of encourages you to be quite broad, but then just have a few heroes that you're very strong in, which for moving from spending diamonds and normal and stargazing is moving with the way Lilith is changing the game, the way that changing Abyssal Expedition so much. You need deep rosters of different classes with how the change are going to introduce the 1.51, where you can restart one round over and over. And that's going to change the way we play these multi-stage campaigns. So the problem you've exactly highlighted, that you need a strong comp so that when you get to the fifth round, you're over the line. You don't need to worry about it. That kind of goes away. So you can use harder, kind of these, let's say, weaker heroes or more normal heroes to do the same thing. You just have to be more creative. And I think Lilith is trying to encourage players to try and think creative. And this goes back to Arty's point, having a broad roster to draw from, that not all of them are deeply invested, and then have those core synergies. Zolbar mentioned earlier, whether it's Talene, Rowan, or something else, you have your core synergies that you can drop in with the fluff or the surrounding heroes that you can meld to adapt to the exact.
I can tell you guys.
That's fair.
Yeah. You go, Soviet.
I can tell you guys from the free-to-play perspective, I'm not that far yet as you are. I'm closer to chapter 30, I think. And I've been stargazing for twins for like all the time. Stargazing is here because I don't buy anything. So I only get the cards that are being awarded from the events and faction towers. And I'm always getting twins to almost getting them to Ascended. So it's really close. And without the stargazing, I would never get them that high. And luckily, we have the hero choice pack right now, which can be used to get specific faction heroes. So right now, in my opinion, those cards should be used only to get Hypogean or Celestial heroes, because those are really good. And as you guys said already, you should focus on either twins or Talene.
Just to sort of interject as well, I think it's important that when you look at the game, you have to ask yourself, what are my goals? Like, what am I prepared to invest? Am I someone who's going to spend thousands of hours with a macro, retrying the stage over and over again? How much am I willing to deal with in terms of like the amount of effort that you want to put in? I think it affects the decisions you have to make. Are you prepared to go for something that has a 1% success rate, or are you going to go for something that has a more consistent success rate? And I think that affects your targets and the heroes that you need to go for. But if you ask yourself from purely like a psychological point of view of like what will bring you the most joy in the game, ultimately perhaps you could argue that is the only thing that would really matter in the long term. I think if you're strictly talking about PvE progression, I think there's an argument to be made for most heroes in the game being at least useful in some form. But you can also go for the super powerful, I like the best heroes in the game. I don't even care if I've only got 3 or 4 heroes. I'm just going to use those heroes. Don't care about progression. You have to ask yourself what will line up best with what I want to get out of the game.
I think on top of that, it'd be really interesting to hear from some of those free-to-play players that are in like Chapter 32, because the other thing on top of that, when you guys talk about multiple formations and stuff like that, is that a lot of people are coming from a perspective of talking about that, of getting there much quicker due to spending money, and you need those heroes earlier. Just on my account alone, like I feel like I stargated Tail Lane to Ascended, Hero to Mythic, and my twins are 2 copies away from Ascended now. I'm still not up to the multi-battle stage yet, and I've got sort of 15 solid heroes that I can lean on. So it's that sort of like, I'd be really interested to hear from a full free-to-play player who is at that Chapter 32 style of thing. But on top of that, I think we're focusing on just stargazing or just summoning. There's no reason you couldn't stargaze, for instance, my account, stargaze Tail Lane to Ascended, then go back to normal summoning. You've got that really busted hero, and then you can build the rest of the cores around that. And you could do something like that. For instance, the diamonds I could have summoned with from the Mihira and twins is a hell of a lot, and I could have built a lot of heroes out of that. So there's more than just one way. And on top of that, you're never going to just stargaze anymore due to the fact that we do have the select summons, and you're always going to be using diamonds every month to do those select summons and get 3, 4, 5 copies of a hero. And just me saying that made me think towards the other argument of doing normal heroes is you can get more Ascended heroes and get more of those select summons every month as well.
All right. I think that's really interesting input about that. I do want to move on to the next topic because we have a lot more to cover. And this one is about where the game is going, because I personally think the devs are listening. And Soviet, one thing I like when I watch your videos is you're out there, you cover all the different guides for all the modes, and I can tell always what you think about them. What do you think are some things that make the game good, and what would you like to see coming up from it in the future?
Thank you for the question. Honestly, I really like how many new things were introduced in AFKArena for the past year, because we started with the blend hero formations, and now we have Expedition, we have Field of Stars, we have faction gear and all that stuff. And the game is evolving really fast, and we have a lot of new modes and rewards that can be beneficial for the overall progression. But I don't really know what else developers will come up with, because so far, everything what was happening was really, really nice. The only thing is the Misty Valley can be really, really problematic for the players who don't have those heroes at the high ascension. So maybe if the developers will make it just like Arena of Trials, where you just have to have the hero and they will be all of the same level for the Misty Valley, so it will be more about the tactics other than leveling your heroes, that would be a good idea. But other than that, I really like the scheduling and the events that are happening in the game right now.
Much of what I've heard from like the sort of development side of the game of like where they want to go, it seems like they're focusing a lot more on a community aspect. It seems like the guild now is a lot more of like a central idea in their long-term thinking. It's probably a logical idea given the fact that community ultimately is what keeps a lot of people playing the game. I've heard from quite a few people that they wouldn't play the game if it wasn't for the communities that they're a part of. But it seems almost as if Lilith are a little bit more concerned about communal content rather than just pushing campaign or trying to make those strong groups that you'll form a connection with and really sort of get an attachment in a sense to the game. I think that's sort of what they're aiming for at the moment.
Oh, we will talk about guilds and communities. We have those sections coming.
I really like the direction that the game is heading. I would say Lilith is definitely one of the more generous companies that I have definitely played their games. I definitely play a lot of other stuff. I play a lot of Arknights. I play a lot of the Ship Girls. I play just, every other mobile game out there, really. It's very telling just how much Lilith gives out, how much every time they have an update, there's just so many diamonds that get put out. There's so many codes that are coming out now still that are giving out diamonds. It's very good to still be even a newer player now, even more so than before, because there is so much more. They do have the Field of Stars, they do have the hero select choices, all of the Wandering Balloon things are giving out Stargazer cards now. They're giving out Primal Emblems, Amplifying Emblems. It's so nice to not just have to grind. There's very few points now that I think people can actually point to and say you're going to be hard locked here. We're not at an era where we have 920 again, where everyone's like, "Ooh, you're going to be stuck here for a little bit. This is where they want you to pay." They've done a very good job of listening to the community. They, especially when skins first came out, when the Brutus skin first came out, and it had stats on it, and the community exploded, and those stats were off so quick. Like it was within 2 to 3 days, those stats were just gone.
All right, if I may, I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate, but I'll start prefacing it by saying I absolutely love Lilith. I think the company is fantastic. The game has had multiple fantastic innovations. Hero choice, a lot of the new events, Abyssal Expedition, I think they're fantastically designed. But there are some gripes I have that I think a lot of the community has addressed. The most large of them probably being Dimensionals. I think their release, I think the exchange is a good idea, but a repetitive exchange is what sets it back. The fact that players maybe once or twice had to save up for these heroes, they had to wait, anticipate them, see how they develop, I think that's a good idea. But when it becomes a series of 5 heroes, 6 heroes maybe with Prince of Persia, who is supposed to come next, new players can't build these lab store heroes. They can't build Shamira as their early carry. They can't build Arthur coming in through late game, end game. They lose out on either the new dimensional hero or a hero which has already been in the game. Another of this, the very fast-paced Abyssal Expedition. So this sort of divides the community quite a bit. A lot of players really enjoy the expedition, but at the same time, there's a lot of players who really don't. It's kind of opposite of the core of the AFK game. It requires a lot of attention, requires a lot of time spent, a lot of communication, and a lot of players don't really enjoy that. I think the core design behind Dimensionals, Abyssal Expedition is fantastic, but their community feedback and response to a lot of it is kind of slow paced. We know they'll change things eventually. It's a question of when, it's always been kind of an issue with the multi-stage. Players have been very stuck up on multi-stages for months now, and they're just now adding something to sort of help these free-to-play players push up the ladder a bit and with more time dedicated progress.
All right. I think that means we overall agree. Anyone who wouldn't?
I just want to add on to that I definitely agree with Arty as well. Especially like the big one for me with the Dimensionals that doesn't make sense is the Arthur thing. Because you can't build Arthur because you continuously use those resources to get the other Dimensionals, you never unlock the ability to go ahead and get those dimensional upgrades for the signature item as well. And like layering on top of that, even if you have them there and you're buying all the Dimensionals with the in-game currency, you never get that opportunity to upgrade the previous dimensional that you bought. So the system just doesn't make sense. I think the balance that I'd like to see, because I definitely agree that it should be expensive in an in-game currency sense to obtain those dimensionals. Except I feel like the Labyrinth coins is completely the wrong resource to emphasize on it due to the fact that it's essential to building your dimensionals as well.
I'm just going to add a point here. I think one of the things this game does so well is there's so many decisions the player has to make. What do I invest in here? What works? What doesn't work? So to sort of disagree a little bit with this line of thinking, I think something that Dimensionals do well is it does create a conflict where a player has to really think and make a decision. What I wouldn't be such a fan of is if it was obvious, hey, everybody gets every hero, everybody gets everything. You never have to worry about what resource to invest. what I like is the fact that this game takes real thought and real effort in managing your resources in order to make sure that you obtain whatever goal it is you're looking for, whatever team, whatever hero. I think if it was easy enough to build the dimensionals, it would be sort of everyone would have every dimensional. It would never be like a conversation you have to have. You wouldn't be speaking about, hey, do I go for these reds? Do I go for dimensional reds? Do I try and build heroes? Do I go for stars and Wukong to get the essence that comes up in the Labyrinth store? And so on. So I like the element of decisions that this game forces on the player. I think it's one of the things the game does very, very well. And I think making everything this sort of railroaded, incredibly easy track to get absolutely everything, I don't think is necessarily the correct way. It isn't to say that everything shouldn't be unobtainable, but I don't think it should necessarily be super easy either, because I think a lot of the value the game has in long-term sort of attachment and the sort of completion idea of the game would be lost if it was so easy.
So I agree with your mentality, certainly. Where I draw the line is when the dimensionals are a limited resource. So they're only available for like the 2 months, basically. So if I really like when people have to make choices with what to build. So you've got an early example of this is faction scrolls. So you can choose your favorite. Back in the day, there was only one real answer to the most effective scroll, which was Wilder. Nowadays, with all these new heroes and buffed heroes, there are plenty of ways to play the game. These choices are good and healthy. But when you're deciding between using your resources to acquire something that's only available for a limited time, or something that is in the shop forever, like Arthur, but you do need it and you do want it to progress. He's a really core part of campaign progression with Gwyneth. When that's weighed against limited time, for me, that just it's not a very healthy choice for the player. But that can be exciting for others. I can certainly see that.
I can see the logic there, but I'm not personally of the belief that they're not going to bring them back. I find it difficult to believe that Lilith would pass up on that opportunity of, hey, Okyo's coming back. Or like, hey, let's reintroduce this in like a limited time portal kind of event. I find it difficult to believe that isn't in their plans. They would be able to see the potential money making of something that's already been made. They already have to some extent the legal rights. They would have to negotiate some elements of the rights, but with the character in the game, it would cost them very little for something that would be quite a large element of return. I do think that it's probably pretty likely that in some form the heroes would return. So I think basing it on the assumption they're never going to come back is a little bit of a leap to make.
Grub, is that your opinion as a lawyer about the licensing, or is this your hopes?
Yeah, I'd say it's a sort of legal opinion, yeah.
I'd like to see them come back, and we'll be eagerly awaiting any signal that would happen.
Awesome. Okay, so we're talking a lot about the community. I think it's about time we just dedicate a topic to that. And the community behind the game is really large and engaged. So, Volkin, you're certainly the man when it comes to what the community likes. You've got a huge following and it's well deserved. I wanted to ask you, what do you feel the game is doing right in terms of the community, and what should it do to keep the momentum going?
I think they listen pretty well. We kind of touched on it earlier with things like the skins. They were very quick to change that. And then again, when Irons and Alberto came out, I just made a video that was like titled RIP F2P because you weren't going to be able to get them. They did fix that fairly quickly. They listened to that. They're very quick on responding to crisis situations. And I think, I can't remember who was saying earlier, touched on that. But the slow, gradual ones, kind of like the end game, multiple teams, that is a great update because every time I play on an account where I'm trying to do those multiple stages, like every time I say it, I'm like, this is just tedious as hell. So it's good that they definitely listen. And we were talking about, the too fast integration of the Abyssal Expedition and stuff like that. And those are the things they're sort of slower on, but they still do listen. I feel like they do respond to the community's needs in that sense. It just takes longer on the things that aren't as crisis driven. But moving forward, I think they have compared to a lot of other games that I've played, they definitely do have a much better response time in addressing issues than other games.
Because one thing I do bring up is how it's very fragmented. Obviously, we made content for lots of different games, but the community is fragmented across different sections. You have Reddit, you have Facebook, you have Discord, you have everything virtually. You have TapTap. A lot of knowledge is out there. That's one thing I like to touch on a lot. If you watch that, you'll probably know. But I do want to ask you something different. I want to ask you about... Oh my God, I forgot the question. 1 second.
Thank God for editing.
Insert edit cut here.
Yeah. Oh man.
No rush, dude. Don't stress out. You're good.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's like, oh, you're right. Do you think they should make an open channel for developer feedback? Because this is one thing that they get it from somewhere, right? You see them respond to the crisis on Reddit, but you don't know how are the developers getting the input. How are we supposed to get in touch with Lilith? How do we voice our complaints to somebody that's listening?
I think that's a tough one. I think that comes down to community managers who are in the pulse of the community and the game. I don't think having a specific channel for, like, I think they probably do have an area where you can leave feedback, but I don't think anyone does, because whenever people, it's just more the general vibe on all of those platforms that gives the feedback. I don't think there's a specific way where you can say, hey guys, this is the place where you give your feedback and this is the only one we listen to, because like you said, the community is divided on where they put their attention. So you've just got to be everywhere and have good community managers, basically, in my opinion.
I can agree with that. Mostly it's a lot of the mods talking. I was a little bit of a mod for both the wiki and the Reddit. So I definitely know that when something comes up, a lot of times we're players too. We have the same kind of frustrations, the same kind of fears about the future for the game. And we definitely voiced our opinion as mods and kind of I would say collected opinions of the community during a lot of these crisis situations. So they definitely, the community managers, when Yakub was the community manager, and I'm sure now that Tony is the community manager as well, they're definitely looking at all those. They're definitely looking at Discord. They're definitely looking at Reddit, the in-game community, all that kind of stuff. So they definitely see you. The main place I think that they really tried to get any kind of suggestions, definitely the Discord. They have a suggestions channel, but I am not personally in the know of how much they actually take that. I think it's just more of mass sentiment, just more of what the community overall wants. They normally have little surveys that go out that you can kind of give your feedback on stuff. I definitely know a lot of these new dimensionals were on one of the surveys that I took. I definitely saw Prince of Persia. I definitely saw Overlord. I saw absolutely everything that we're getting now in these surveys. So
wait,
I mean,
what surveys?
It's they had surveys go out in game. I think that it was to a select amount of players, but anyone who put the IRL into their phone could take the survey as well, and you could get diamonds. It pops up every now and then on Reddit when someone goes, "Hey, what is this?"
I actually do have a personal anecdote on that. So I recently, with the changes you spoke, there was a change in the community management team that you took it there. I was recently able to get a channel to voice the kind of feedback that I see, which is really nice that at least some people have a direct channel and we see somebody that's listening. And what do you think is making this game so successful in terms of community? Because you see so many Reddit followings. Like, what do you think is the strong suit of this game in terms of a community?
I think it's, there's a couple things. I just think different game styles, I feel like this is a bit of a macro thing that I don't know if this makes sense, but I feel like different game styles attract different groups. And I feel like AFKArena is in that general, not full, just waifu collector style that's really flooded the mobile market at the moment, where, like, as weird as it sounds, I feel like it does attract a more balanced player base. And and sometimes it's just luck of the draw. It's just, I feel like it's an overall just friendlier community. You're always going to see division between free to play, pay to play, and stuff like that. But even looking at the top guilds and stuff, leaders like Shizzam, you can probably add to this as well. But like, there's more friendliness up the top of people communicating and just having fun. I think it's a little bit of a mixture of factors, but just luck of the draw can turn these things as well.
Yeah, definitely. The community is very collaborative. I've worked a bit with Arty, and so it's definitely got a very strong community across strong guilds, across strong players. If you message a player that's doing very well in Twisted Realm and ask them, how did they score so highly? I think most of the time they will tell you. It's not a community of that's very code or hiding how they do what they do.
Since we're already on the topic of Lilith, communication, and everything, I will segue this to the next one. Lilith seems to be very attentive to the balance between free to play and pay to play. So while the game growth is naturally slowing down, I bet you all know, you've seen the graphs, many players are upset about the recent pay-to-play oriented events. Obviously, there was the whole Overlords thing we kind of touched on. So Panafonic, I really respect what you do, and I'm confident you've seen many apps go right and wrong in the past. How would you approach designing a game so it encourages players to support it while keeping the large F2P community engaged?
Ooh, that's definitely a tough one. I honestly, I like what they're doing right now. It definitely wasn't a lot like this there, especially going back to our stargazing thing, where that was the only real way to get a specific hero for so long. And now that they've added in the select heroes, it's so much easier to just kind of hyper focus stuff. I think if I was gonna do something, I would do it a lot like they're doing it right now with, I would say, more generous events that they have. They always have something new coming out. They're always giving you a bunch of upgrade material, a bunch of stargazing cards. Unfortunately, the newest Wandering Balloon looks a little less fortunate or a little less giving than a lot of the other ones, but it had to happen eventually.
And the Dragon Crystal trade.
Yeah, the Dragon Crystals are real weird because that's definitely a reward for the pay to play, or rather than the free to play, simply because what you get, what like 980 is what we got, and that's really not a lot to buy anything. So they're definitely pushing you to pay for that, but at the same time, you don't really lose anything for not paying for it. It's mostly just a bunch of heroes, bunch of equipment and stuff, and you already weren't going to get that from the Abyssal expedition, so it's just more of something that if someone has the money, they're just going to come in and grab it anyway. And if they're coming in to grab it, they're probably well further than you, and you don't have to worry about them, surpassing you pretty much because of that.
And sorry, if I can interrupt with a question, do you think they're trying out new ideas? Like these Celestial and Hypergean cards.
I actually really like that.
Yeah, so maybe they're. I know it was a bomb, and I know everyone thinks it's rubbish, and I agree. But do you think maybe they're trying out, testing the waters on some new concepts that they're going to roll out later?
Oh God, I would love it if they gave us Celestial or Hypergen cards just like off of one of the events. I think that would be just absolutely great.
Off the tower.
That would just feel so fun. Even like it would feel more fun than the actual value on that, I can tell you.
Until you pull a Wukong and then you just destroy
it. Or a Flora.
A Flora maybe, because you get Wukong through lab, and the Flora is a little harder to get, and she's like kind of cool because she has like a unique mechanic thing. I think Volkin hit it on the nail. The Wukong is the one that you get in like oof.
It's like pulling a non-ascended hero from a purple card.
just expanding on that too, because this is like, I don't really prep any of my videos, but this is a video like I've been like writing notes just as I think of them for like 2 weeks because I wanted to make one talking about is AFKArena free to play or like is it pay to win? I feel like they do a very good balance in that if you're talking pay to win in a sense of competing at top end arena, it's completely pay to win. There's no doubt about it. Like you're not. Yes, I've seen some free to play players get into the the top 10, but those are really old accounts who've just outlasted the people who have quit. But having said that, it is one of the most free-to-play friendly games that I've played because the amount of enjoyment and resources you can get as free-to-play is phenomenal. So I feel like they've actually balanced it well in a way that if you want to be free-to-play, you're not sort of baited into that, but I want to be in the top of arena because it's too far out of your reach for the first year at least anyway, unless you outlast people that leave. So I feel like they've done that balance well. And a lot of the features that they do bring in, they match how good they are for free to play along with pay to play. For instance, the select summons. Now that one, like that was sort of like, that was a big change. And I don't think it's quite understood how big that was because like free to play are like, sweet, I get, the select hero. But for the whales and such, it's actually a very, I'd say, hard business decision for them to make between the short-term ROI to the long-term ROI of making that decision, just because they're losing money that has to be invested by the whales to keep up to date with every hero. But I also think they're keeping them in it for the longer term because you don't have to spend as much to get those heroes. So they made that choice on a community basis and keeping everyone happy as opposed to the short-term money-making strategies.
So let's say on a scale, if 0 is like only skins and nothing that's actually competitive and useful, and 100 is completely blocked behind pay to buy everything in the game, DLCs for furniture or something, where do you think AFKArena is, and do you think it's a good position?
I feel like it's transitioned more towards the pay-to-win aspect, at least not in the recent future, but as a general trend. So before the Legends Championship, before the Elder Tree was invented, came to grace us with its presence, the Legends Championship tournament was very, very different. Nowadays, if your celerity and sustenance branches are, say, 10 levels lower than your opponents, the chances of you winning are very near 0. Because the Legends Championship tournament every hero is scaled to level 240, and those last branch levels at the end, the flat bonuses scale with every level. So by the time where the difference between a 90 branch and a 100 branch is everything. So before the Elder Tree, there was literally just stars and signature items, and the PvP endgame, the LC was very, very different. So when the Elder Tree landed, that for me was the real shift towards a pay-to-win game. However, as others have mentioned, the select summons is a huge tool for everybody, not just for free-to-play players to acquire heroes they need and new heroes as they're released.
Yeah, I think
if I may cut in a little bit, I think from a PvP aspect, the game is on a very high pay-to-win scale. The tree takes months of investment, both monetarily and just time-wise. It takes a lot of time to get the heroes built up for that. And you need every star counts, every sig counts, every plus 30 to plus 40 on a PvP scale. It is probably like an 85 out of 100. But I think the lack of focus on PvP from the majority of the player base kind of shows the trend of most of the game is not PvP focused. And as a whole, the game and a lot of the community is focused around PvE. And from a PvE side, it's not really sort of a competitive state. You play at your own pace. You can obviously push harder. You can find others, bounce ideas, push better than others. But as a whole, it's very free-to-play friendly. The hero choice summons are included. The general summons are much higher than other games. It isn't like other gachas. I think if we're just talking as a whole for the game, it's maybe 20 out of 100 for. It's not very pay to win whatsoever unless you're trying to delve into this piece.
Yeah, I would like to add to Arty a little bit that the PvP rewards from the Legends Championship are purely cosmetical, right? And the difference between rank 1 and rank 50, for example, in Arena of Heroes isn't that significant. So when I just started, I was really upset that I can't get to Legends Championship, but when I realized that I'm not getting anything useful there, I'm like, okay, I can live with that. And same goes with most pay-to-win features like skins and that kind of stuff. So as a free-to-play player, I don't envy people who invest money in it because they're getting progress in the campaign and in the areas where we don't get anything special. So that was the key, other than Dragon Crystals, which was really weird. But we talked about that a little bit already.
Just to add on to Arty's statement of it's like more PvE driven, I also think it's more PvE driven because that's the direction they're focusing on. I feel like the community would be much more involved in PvP if it was a viable option. People have just sort of passed it off and gone, well, that's not what I can do, so I'm not going to do it. Do you guys think it would be cool to see, like my idea was I'd love to see a separate format, sort of like a draft arena, kind of like in card games like Hearthstone and stuff, where you get some, heroes and it's all balanced out, not as like the competitive PvP format, but just a PvP format where everyone can go in and have fun and sort of enjoy PvP team building as such and experiment with that. Because at the moment, it just feels like PvP just isn't something that is available to everyone on a proper, like, competitive, like, trying to build team scale. So everyone just passes it off.
Yeah, I totally agree that if they focused PvP more, the community would embrace that and get more involved. A suggestion that this strictly with the Legends Championship, but I mean there are other options such as additional game modes. But a suggestion that I made was to increase the level of the heroes that fight in the Legends Championship, because currently they're all 240. If the level was made higher, say 300 or even higher, 360, the tree would have much less of an effect, and you would actually have a chance to, when you're up against somebody with a much higher tree than you, the match isn't already predetermined before you start. Sorry, I was just going to say, I would also really like another PvP game mode, because that is where my main interest in the game lies. Although I do enjoy pushing the campaign and will enjoy it a lot more when the new patch comes out and we can, tackle those 5-stage teams at our own pace. PvP has always been my preferred game mode.
All right. Stats, I do think, one second, you guys will get to talk about this. I know this is a topic you guys have a lot to say about. Stats are a topic and they're right next up. So I'll just shift this to Grub and then we could keep up the same discussion. So the in-depth side of the game, one thing I like about it myself is how intricate the engine is. You see basic stats like HP, attack, and defense, the flat stats for tree you guys talked about, multi-stats like haste, recovery, physical resistance. Some heroes have underwhelming furniture, signature item abilities, in which case you need to evaluate investment in them based off of those stats. So Grub, you've researched this game far and wide, and I'm sure you have a lot to say, and you guys will probably have a lot to follow up. When evaluating gear, SI, furniture, what would you look for to know how valuable is a stat bonus to a hero?
The first question you have to answer whenever you're looking at investment is how the investment itself actually works. Is it a flat amount? Is it something that is like 1 point will do 1 point, as in, say you invested in SI, you get a flat amount per level you increase the SI by. But if you talk about a tree, for example, it's an exponential increase, i.e. the increases at the highest end are much higher than the ones at the lower end. So when I was looking at a lot of the stuff behind the scenes, something I'm doing at the moment is trying to work out exactly how haste itself actually interacts. I'm doing that by taking the furniture off Belinda in this case, because the hanging furniture provides 2.3 haste per level. So you can use it to manipulate her haste and then measure the cooldowns on like a frame by frame sort of basis. I've used in Premiere Pro and sort of pulling it around. But the way this game handles data is so strange. It scales from 0, 2.3, 4.6, 6.9 in the raw values, but the game displays them as 0, 2, 4, 6, as if it's rounding it down rather than up. We don't even know if it applies the actual decimal value that it's looking for or if it's applying the actual rounded value. So I'm just sort of trying to work out a lot of the things behind the scenes, but it's such a difficult thing to do because there is no actual consistent test environment. Every fight has so much RNG in it. The slightest thing of positioning throws the time scales off. It throws absolutely everything off. So it's so difficult to find a reproducible way that you can actually say, hey, this hero is affected in this way by haste. And then if you had that haste formula, you can then work out the base cooldown of every hero and then say, hey, this is how I'd use these heroes. This is how their power curve actually changes with haste. How you can use twins and other potent sources of haste in particular. So it's something I think that most of these stats operate on a sort of diminishing returns curve, as we know. There's been some discussion of dodge versus accuracy, which is mostly on a diminishing returns curve. But we just know so little about the game because, as we know, the descriptions in the game aren't very helpful. Odin 9 is a good example because what the game doesn't tell you is that it still applies and continues to stack even when Odin himself is dead. That's another one of these incredibly potent things that we don't know about because the game doesn't tell us these details. So when we actually evaluate an investment, we have to say, how effective is this tool in countering a particular idea? As in, say we have a tanky to you in front of you. How effective is End? How effective is Drez? How effective is Ezio in dealing with this? So you have to look at something as a counter more than as something as an objective strength because there's so much behind the scenes you just don't know. So I think it's more logical to approach things from a sort of counter point of view and something that is necessary in a vacuum.
That's fair. Shizzam, you probably have a lot to say.
I can't follow Grub.
Actually, do you want to know something fun about the game? When I was testing out how Arthur interacts with a bunch of people, I found out that having less characters on your team makes them faster.
What?
If you enter into a fight, a full 3v2, even a 3v3, I realized my characters were getting into place faster, and that I forget her name right now, but
Probably the engine is messed up.
Athalia was actually able to stop a few people that she should not be able to stop. Her opening bit was actually able to stop Sophia's box.
Pro PvP strat coming up.
Obviously, you're never going to do this in an actual fight. You would get destroyed using 3v5, but it was just fun to see.
Right, guys, if you like
looking at the sort of haste side for me as well, I noticed the game engine behaves so weirdly. One of the things I was testing is Belinda's Divine Retribution, which is her big orb thing. And sometimes it would happen where she's actually shooting right next to her, but for some reason the projectile would actually take longer to hit than right across the room. It was very, very strange, and sometimes it was half a second's difference. So it was just such a weird thing that happens behind the scenes because we don't even know what FPS the game is capped at, as far as I know. I think it's somewhere between 90 and 120. I think it's closer to 90. But it's just one of those things that's so hard to tell about how weirdly this game behaves behind the scenes. I think people mined the haste coefficient value for the boots, didn't they? And it was 0.78996 or something like that. It's just these incredibly complicated decimal values behind the scenes that you just can't have any hope of being able to grasp without having to see the data, which of course is encrypted. But it's just such a weird thing playing a game that you know so little about. You wouldn't play a League game without knowing your hero's cooldowns or knowing actually how damage is even calculated. We don't even know that necessarily yet.
Which is also, we've definitely been chasing the how damage versus defense works for a little bit. I know I have all the power scaling right now. I've got everything that I can use to figure out how all the stats of the characters scale, and definitely the encrypted part is maybe a little bit because because of my actions, I definitely know I've been told that it will not be easy going forward to look at stuff.
Talk
So
to
I
me later.
apologize for
Talk to me
that.
offline. All right. I do want to ground this though, because this is very in-depth research. I want to make this something that viewers could actually use. Grub, Aziz or twins? Which one is plus 30?
Ooh, which one first?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a difficult question. I would probably lean towards twins, to be honest. Because for a simple reason of the fact that they seem to be going for characters that can duplicate the Horrify effect with like Lucretia 9, Enz has it from his auto attacks. It seems like they're more interested currently in reproducing Ez's abilities. I mean, obviously notwithstanding the call function. But I think currently the twins and the being the only really reliable source of CC immunity, I think I would still err towards the twins.
Just on top of that, when we were talking earlier, if we're talking about ascending 25 other heroes first, it might be Aziz first for some people who don't have the possibility of doing the twins due to normal summons as well.
Also, the twins just take more damage than anyone else, obviously, because there's two of them.
Furniture really helps them out, though. It's a massive shield.
Oh, yes.
Added so much survivability that they really needed before the update.
Same for Ziz. Furniture also. Survivability.
I mean, but then there's some stats that you actually want people like Grub looking into, because, like, to bring it down, for example, people thought at first Sophia plus 30 is going to be completely broken, and then some nerds did the math, and people got her, said it's underwhelming. Seems like she needs to ult once, sometimes twice, or even 3 times before that actually procs. So sometimes even this deep research can turn into something that's really useful for us to know. I personally, I'm curious about Henry plus 20. But last but not least, I want to talk about the social aspect in game. I promised you guys this. So guilds are becoming more and more relevant over time. For example, Abyssal probably becoming a recurring event, and there's leaks about new mine features. So we know that guilds are something that Lilith is looking at. In Zolbar, you're leading perhaps the oldest guild alive in the game. I want to pick your mind about guilds as they are now. So I want to know, what would be your advice to viewers trying to understand how guilds select players and replace them, especially in regard to WestWorld? And also, if you feel like Lilith's focus is accurate when it comes to guild activities as a whole.
Right. So just to talk a little bit about WestWorld, the guild in general to start off. I'd say half the guild is a very active, talkative core that communicates on a daily basis on in-game chat and on Discord. And then we have the rest of the members who are less active or less talkative. And yeah, they may not have as much passion for the game as the rest of us. They may not have as much passion for us as we do, but they have other things in their life they're active with. We totally understand that. The core of the guild, will never be replaced, basically. It's a long-standing group of people who, get on with each other very well. The only time members of the guild are ever replaced, and I absolutely despise replacing anyone. It's awful, but sometimes it's necessary for the greater good of everybody involved. So basically, the only time I would ever consider removing somebody from the guild is when they prove that they have no interest in sort of working with us to achieve things together. So before Abyssal, I think guild makeup was very different. We were quite lucky in that we had a very active core regardless of Abyssal. But I think a lot of guilds are or have come to terms with the fact that you can't just have people who log on once every 2 or 3 days, regardless of how strong their account is. If you're looking to do well in these events, they're not useful. It's kind of changed the parameters by which guilds who are interested in Abyssal are looking for members. So while Abyssal is certainly not the focus of WestWorld. WestWorld's always been a social guild with competitive individuals. We like people that know what they're talking about. We like people who sort of can evidence that they have a sort of good grasp on the game. And this obviously translates into Abyssal well, because people who know what they're doing and have a good knowledge of what heroes to use when and which heroes they have chosen to upgrade, these people will be successful in whatever they do in the game. So basically, when we recruit, and I'm sure this is relatively similar for other guilds, but not most of the top guilds, I'd imagine, is we have free-to-play players. Spending has never been something we look for or a requirement. Basically, a demonstration that you know what you're doing. You want to join our group of people and work together with us to do as well as we possibly can in Abyssal and events like it in the future.
And how about the general direction? Do you feel like those kinds of events are the right way to go?
So Abyssal is very polarizing. I personally really like it and would look forward to it much more if it was slightly less frequent. The fact that it's, especially this one being so, I know it's a beta, but this one being so soon after the last one has been tiring for sure. I wasn't really, even though it was a new map, it's the old Abyssal was still quite fresh. I wasn't really very hyped. And I think I can speak for quite a few people when I say that Abyssal, it can be really fun in concept. It's really interesting and creative. It requires a lot of activity, and it's difficult to require activity to be competitive in a game titled AFKArena. I just think it's a bit of a contrast, but I really love it. I just wish it was slightly less frequent.
I think the realm
to sort of a guild aspect. A lot of players either starting to build up guilds, searching for their own guilds. I think there's a lot of parts of sort of guild management and guild construction that people kind of look over. The biggest thing I kind of call a guild core. I used to lead a guild called Amacida. Shizzam pronounced it wonderfully on his podcast. I think a lot of guilds either have to have sort of a good focus. I think a lot of the top guilds in the game, right? Casuals kind of focuses around bringing together some of the best individuals in the game. I know Cloud, when Shizzam was on, he talked a lot about kind of how it started off as this project to get people from the same server who are friendly together, and sort of kept on evolving, and now it's also one of the top guilds in the game. A place like WestWorld, from what I've seen, is it's a lot of older players who enjoyed communicating, sort of united together. And I think if you're looking for a guild or trying to build a guild, you need to have this kind of aspect. You need to have, what are you trying to build around? Are you trying to be the best AE guild in? Are you trying to be just like a very casual guild? I reconstructed a guild that was originally aimed to be very competitive into being very communicative. I built it around a Discord. I had people who were very active, put that together, and sort of constructed a core around that. And I think a lot of people need to know what they want from the game and try to find a guild that supports that sort of aspect of playing.
So I'm just going to respond. I did ask Linka. Sorry.
All right. So with that, I think this was great. At least for me, it really was. Let's move on to your final thoughts. So in the same order we did the introductions. Arty, what do you think?
I think so far, just kind of being on this has been wonderful. I like the way the game is going. I think there's a very bright future for Lilith and for the community. It's been an honor to be on here and a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, much the same thing from my side as well. It's been an honor to be on here, talking with some of you and hearing your opinions on things and sort of sharing the optimism about how the game's going. I think the way they're going is a very sort of positive community focus, which is always the better thing for the long term of the game. Shout out to everyone at Cloud, Charles, Next, Chippy, you know who you are.
Yes, it's very nice to be on here. I don't consider myself a massive part of the community. I do most of my work behind the scenes, kind of giving stuff to people so that they can get the word out there. But it's always nice to be on here and talk to all of you guys.
Yep, Shizzam here. It's been lovely speaking to all of you and being able to put voices to names. It's definitely feels a lot more personal. Been very enjoyable. And I think from the game's perspective, I really like how Lilith are trying to open up kind of all of the game to all of the players, especially the changes they're introducing for the late game with the campaign refreshes. So I like the direction the game is headed in.
I would totally agree with all of you. The game is going totally right direction, and I'm really hyped to see what's going to be happening in the next year, because we have already so many features and more to come, so I can't wait for that. And it was a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed this session, guys, and I hope it's not the last one.
I just wanted to thank all you guys for the work that you guys do. Like Panafonic, you do it behind the scenes, but it's really helpful and enjoyable to everyone. Grub, the amount of stuff you just went through that I like is way over my head. Like, I'll let you keep doing that stuff, and then I'll accept your word as the word, because that is intense, the amount of stuff you do. And lastly, obviously, Linka, like the organization of doing something like this, there's a lot of effort behind the scenes that goes into it. So I just really wanted to thank Linka. And because this is on your YouTube channel, the viewers, 2 takeaways. At the end of the day, it's a game, so do what you have fun doing, and subscribe to Linka because he puts in a hell of a lot of effort and makes some fantastic content. So,
Thank you. Zolbar?
Yeah, it's don't really have much more to add other than thank you very much to you, Linka, for organizing this and having us all here. Thank you to all of the guests for a very pleasant conversation. Good to have a chat with you guys on voice. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you all.
Awesome. So I think that's our first ever roundtable. Thank you everybody for taking part. I'll be listening to the audience, and I'd love to have you on another one of these. Definitely check out our guest content. I'll link everything somewhere down wherever you watch this. And thank you everybody for coming. It's been my absolute pleasure. I'm very happy we did this.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
All right. I think that's it. I think we did it.
Oh,
Hey.
That was wonderful. Thank you, guys.
that was really good.